Hi, Steve again, and I'm continuing my talks on PVC and kind of living with this stuff. And one of the things years ago that my doctor prescribed to me to help with the anxiety. Now, this would have been, again, the early aughts, the early 2000s, before I had my clinical training, was lorazepam. It's a benzodiazepine. The expensive name is Ativan, and then there's others. You can look it up. Look up Benzos, and so on and so forth. But because of the PVCs, I took this stuff like 3 times a day. 1 milligram, I think at the time, was like once or twice a day. And then years into that process, I reduced it down to, as I got control over the PVCs, I reduced it down to about 0.5 milligrams once a day for sleep. I struggled with sleep. And there were periods where I got off of them, completely off of lorazepam completely, and then I'd get back on them, get off of them, and then get back on them. I never gave it much thought until I started my clinical work. And as a clinical counselor, I had training in understanding psychopharmacology. What do these drugs do? And I'm not going to get into the details of what they actually do to the brain. I'm just going to tell you what I'm facing because of long-term use of this stuff. You can look that stuff up and somebody can explain it much better than I am. It essentially affects the GABA receptors in the brain. But these things are pretty freaking harsh. They're hard to get off of if you've taken them for any time. Now, one of the myths that I heard was that early on, if you take these things short term, there's no real risk of dependency. But that's not true. You can develop dependency pretty quick. Now, I'm not saying addiction, all right? I'm saying dependency. All right, let's make that distinction. So I've been taking them off and on for many, many, many years, and I've decided that I want to get off of them. I have skills, coping skills. I have skills that I use with anxiety, skills that I use with my PVCs. Sometimes they don't work, but I usually ran to lorazepam. It's like it was easy to take. It had a quick effect. It acted pretty quickly, and it stays in the body relatively in a really short period of time. It doesn't hang around for too long as far as that goes. That's why you can take 3 times a day like my doctor prescribed. But my doctor didn't explain to me the dependency issues on this stuff. And when you try to come off of them completely, there are some severe withdrawal symptoms. And the most severe, of course, is, you can have seizures. They can actually give you this stuff when you're having seizures. But you can go into seizures withdrawing all this stuff cold turkey. I'm a cold turkey kind of guy, so I'm like, you stop taking your pills, right? Well, you shouldn't do that unless you got bigger stones than I got. And you may have. But so I'm dependent on them. I want off. So I struggle with that because I also have the GERD, and one of the things that I'm slowly understanding is how medications can really inflame that or cause GERD. For instance, calcium channel blockers, as I'm learning, can really make this stuff nasty, can make it really exacerbated and perhaps cause it. So when I take these meds, it could be aggravating this. Well, when you aggravate this, it causes me PVCs or SVT, and then I want to run back to the medications, which it's not fixing the issue. It's actually causing my issues. So I'm not a doctor. My advice is not medical. Always seek medical help, a psychiatrist in this case, or a doctor, an MD, for medical assistance on taking any kind of drugs. You may need them. And again, my phone goes off. I gotta learn to do that, silence that. But don't go into it lightly. Do your research on your own. They were beneficial, and there's some cases that I would recommend for a client perhaps to get on these things short terms. But I also would caution them on the dependency, the potential dependency problems with these things. All right. So PVCs, they create so much anxiety. SVT creates so much anxiety. I get it, and I've used them, but now I want to get off. And my early research is indicating that some people can go cold turkey on these things and just stop. apparently I'm not one of those people, and this could take me up to a year to get off of these things through a special regimen, right? Because I've been on them so long. Even this little bit of dose of 0.5, it creates problems, so you have to be very careful with it. So what I'm saying is, you have anxiety with PVCs, you have anxiety with SVT, you may have SVT and PVCs because of anxiety, or both, or it's just a big mess, who knows. And I understand the reason that people would want to take them. I do. This is a cautionary tale. Think about it. I recommend, if you're having a lot of anxiety, is to find someone that you can really talk this through when you're having those moments. Much like people do with AA, you have a sponsor. I think one of the things that we miss in the PVC world, the cardiac world, is we need people just to talk to quiet that anxiety. People like us that can quiet that anxiety. Because I know talking with other people and reading message boards, Facebook groups of people with PVC, SVT, and all these cardiac problems makes life a little easier, and we need it. Instead of necessarily the medication, I wish I would have taken more of this approach early on. Instead of, I'm having anxiety, I need to have lorazepam. I wish I would have found that sponsor. So it's not a novel idea, it's not a new idea, but it's something that we don't really lean on. I've looking for PVC groups, support groups, where you sit down with in a group with other folks and talk about this stuff. I'm looking around for that, and hopefully that's something I can develop in my city. But be careful with the benzos. Anything to do with anxiety, just be very cautious and do your research and make sure the best piece of advice, your doctor just doesn't throw them at you like candy. Because you find yourself in a position where you have to get off of these things, and it may not go so well. So just be cautious, be careful, because we have PVCs, we have SVT, we have these things. They create a lot of anxiety, but trying to come off this stuff can put you through hell. More PVCs and SVTs as you go through it, is I kind of find out sometimes. So I hope that helps. If not, sorry. And if it did, great. I hope it did. More to come if you're watching. Thanks a lot.